Hello, Mark.
Hi, Gabby. How are you?
I'm okay. It's been a
Good.
tough week, but I'm glad to be kind of back in a saddle, so to speak, after what has been a very emotional few days.
Good.
And actually, we're sitting here now, having already had our chat with Rob Smethurst, and some of the things he talks about
Yeah.
in terms of football as a community, our family have experienced in bucket loads over the last few days, and we have been totally overwhelmed and inundated with messages of love, support, and also stories about things that my dad has done through his career and the way he's affected and impacted the lives not just of players but of fans and things we didn't know. And it just kind of highlighted to me, again, kind of how important football is and how it connects people, and sport and football really show up in moments like this.
The football community knows how to respect and show love to those who have gone, doesn't it? It knows how to pull together. And I mean, even just one example off the top of my head, with the Tottenham FA Cup tie on Saturday evening at Villa, and how they did the tribute for your dad, and Martin Chivers as well, and all the former Spurs players, some of whom would have played with your dad, played
Mm.
with Glenn Hoddle, didn't they?
Mm.
Stood on the side of the pit. They just
Well, I know there's
they just do it beautifully to football clubs.
Leeds was obviously his biggest club. He was there for nine
Yeah,
years. And I mean, the Spurs fans, I said to one of my friends who's a season ticket holder, I said, Spurs fans have been incredible reaching out, Coventry City. But you can imagine Leeds, he was there for 9 years in those kind of glory years. And that's where, he won the medals and the trophies and played in European finals.
yeah.
And so obviously the Leeds fans, there's been a massive outpouring of love. And at the game on Saturday against Fulham, there will be a tribute there. But it's not just those big shows of things, actually. It's this little stories of just, when fans were really connected to players, and the anecdotes people have shared with me about meeting him and how generous he was with his time. And then, of course, at Bradford City, going through that tragedy and being, as he was, right at the heart of that, and going to
Oh,
every funeral, and how important it was for him that the players were protected, and those players who played in that team that day, how many of them, attribute their development from boys to men to him. And so, as you can imagine, it's been a week.
yeah,
Mm.
I can imagine. But you're getting a lot of comfort out of
A
it.
lot of comfort. So thank you to anybody who's listening who's shared their stories, because it honestly has been enormously comforting to all of us.
The sporting week has been absolutely astonishing. Both our football, and I will come on to the American
I'd like you to, yeah,
football.
because I was.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Should we do that first? You want to tell me? Yeah.
Yes. Do you know what? Do you know what? Because so often, and this is by no means a complaint, but so often in in what we do, because it's a job, you don't sometimes live it as a fan, because you're going from one thing to another. And with the NFL at the moment, I am completely living it as a fan. There's no work connected to it. I don't do any NFL shows. And for the first time in what feels like a lifetime for me, my team are good. My team are fun, and I have watched back the highlights of Chicago Bears win in the wild card round playoff over their biggest rivals, the Green Bay Packers. I must have watched the highlights back about 15 times. I have listened to every podcast. I have read every article. I am in love with our head coach Ben
Have
Johnson
you
and
asked for the weekend off so you can actually go out if you get that far to the Super?
I haven't yet, because that would tempt fate, and I'm still, because our season is all about being terrible in the main for 3 quarters, falling behind by about 3 touchdowns, and then producing some magnificent Lazarus type comeback every time. So I haven't yet, because I don't want to tempt fate, and it will still be really hard to get to the Super Bowl. But this is the first year of our head coach, only the second year of our quarterback, and the most important thing, and we talked to Rob about this, don't we? It's fun.
Mm.
My God, I am the smile on my face all the time, and how much I'm buzzing and texting people about it. And the bigger picture here is, it is not just the Bears. This knockout stage, these playoffs, have been the best that I can remember. There've been 6 games. 4 of them have been settled by a touchdown in the last 2 minutes. In those 4 games, the leads have changed hands 12 times. You couldn't predict who is going to win this Super Bowl. we talk about so much about what sports want and what they need and competitive balance and entertainment, and genuinely at the moment, this is as partly because Chicago are great, but this is as much fun and as exciting and as unpredictable as any sport I can think of at the moment.
Which is a blessed antidote to what's going on with your football team at the moment.
Oh my God.
Sorry to bring things down. We've both worked with Michael Carrick this season, funnily enough, haven't we?
By the way, how bad company must we be for him to want to go,
well,
do you know what, I'll go and
I
try
had Gary
and
O'Neill last week on Match of the Day, and he went off and managed Strasbourg, and he doesn't speak a word of French. And then we both had Michael Carrick, and he's gone off to manage what looks like one of the most basket case football clubs in the world right now. So, but actually, in all seriousness, I think we were both really impressed with him, and when he came into, kind of the studio and worked with us, how brilliantly he kind of was able to read the game and then incisively put it into a minute or 2 minute of analysis, which is a real skill. And he just read the game brilliantly and beautifully, and it feels like he's a master tactician.
Massive tactician. I mean, he's also got to be this phenomenal motivator as well, I think, given the state that they're in. And the reason I say that is they've got no other football now, bar league games. And the last time they were in this situation was with Ralph Ragnick, and the whole thing went spiraled very quickly, and it was quite acrimonious and miserable. So he's got quite a lot of work to do on that front. I do think his assistant is going to be Steve Holland, who was Gareth Southgate's assistant. I think that's a really clever appointment, and he's got a coach that he's worked with many times, Jonathan Woodgate, who again has been on working with us recently. So there's another one
Bites the dust.
biffed off. Johnny Evans from a sort of former United player point of view. So he's got an interesting coaching staff, but do you know, so many people have gone into that football club and have come out worse for the experience over the last 12 years, that I just hope, and I'm sure you do, because we really like working with him. He's such I just hope it works. Forget my allegiance to United. I just actually hope it works for him. Yeah,
and as you said at the very beginning there, that the culture seems to be the thing that really needs working on right now, doesn't it? And there's a lot of pressure for ex-Man United players, of which you named a couple there who are involved with him, obviously, in Johnny Evans, have got to somehow infiltrate these players with that. And, by osmosis, they've got to learn what that means very quickly.
But culture comes from and again, this is something else we'll talk about with Rob when he joins. Culture comes from the very top, doesn't it? I mean, and if you've got and people go, why do United fans keep going on about the owners? They spend money on the players, they do this, they do that. But, if you've got owners who have saddled the club with debt, like the Glazers have on the one hand, and another minority owner who's come in and sacked so many people and dropped the morale down, what does that say about the culture?
The people who've been there for 30 years, doing the little jobs that don't get seen but actually mean so much to people, as we've discussed on the podcast many times before. So we've kind of touched on a few things that we're going to chat to Rob about, and it is such a contrast to what is going on at a club like Manchester United, who, I said it I think last week, who are still, the second richest club in the world according to the Forbes recent list of football clubs, with Real Madrid obviously leading the way. They've had a big week as well, haven't they? Real Madrid. They can't get things right. So it turns out culture doesn't matter. You can still make money. But is that important? Well, that's kind of what we're going to discuss.
It is. Please send your questions in. The sportsagents@global.com on email. You can message us on social media or via the link in the episode description.
And actually, I touched on kind of the kind of stories I've had. I mean, I could sit here for hours telling you them, but one story which got repeated to me by Ellis James, who's a massive Welsh football fan, was BBC Radio Wales had phone-ins all day, the day of my dad's passing, and people telling stories. And one was about when he was...
did that all day?
Yeah, pretty much like loads and loads of... Like, people just kept texting me saying, oh, there's another phone-in, there's another phone-in. And one of the stories was about a journalist who now works at Sky, and when he was a young fan of Swansea City at the time, got his mum to ring up the club shop to find out if the game was on, because the weather was bad and they weren't sure if the game was going ahead. And she expected to speak to Myra, who ran the club shop at Swansea. And my dad picked the phone up and said, yep, tell Johnny to come down. The game is on. And, just other times, different times, weren't they, when football managers had, a lot more on their plate than just dealing with a director of football and wondering, kind of if they could bring a centre-half in. So, some lovely, lovely stories that that we had.
Well, we'll keep that going. We'll keep that going. The celebration of football clubs and what they mean to people when the Macclesfield owner, Robert Smethurst, joins us next.
Robert, welcome to the Sports Agents. Congratulations, obviously. But are you getting kind of bored yet of people coming up to you and just wanting to give you a massive hug and telling you congratulations?
Do you know what? It's been incredible. I mean, I've never, ever expected it. But yeah, over the last couple of days, it's just been, I think we broke the internet. I think, it's been unbelievable. I was just at Paddle this morning, actually, and a couple of guys just walked on asking for selfies, and I'm thinking, really? It's crazy. But it's, I think it's one of those moments in history that we've created, and I think, it is amazing what's going on.
Did it put you off your paddle?
He did actually. Walked on. I think I was just about to win as well.
Yeah, good excuse that.
And then I lost.
Well, sparing Chapper's blushes, I said to him last night when I was messaging him about today, sitting watching that at home, it was just glorious. It was everything the FA Cup is, you hope, supposed to be, but we so rarely, it's one in a trillion, isn't it? This is the biggest ever, but the shocks are fantastic. But just the whole atmosphere, the way the fans reacted, the way the players reacted, and the way it was broadcast was a joy. And it will be forever, I think, one of those moments. If you were there live watching it, you will tell your grandkids about.
Do you know what? I often think, who would have thought it? I bought the club 5 years ago. Obviously after a boozy.
Can we go into
event.
that, please?
Yeah, of course. It was a bit crazy, really. I've, I sort of sold my business, did really well, and then, unfortunately, went into a sort of oblivion of addiction, really. I didn't really feel like I had a purpose, and obviously, when I saw the football club on Rightmove, I kind of did it as a bit of a joke, really. It was let's have a go and let's buy it, and I bought it within about 24 hours, and I remember. Going down to the football club. I'm not even seeing it at this stage. I just did it for a bit of a laugh because I wasn't in a good place. And I remember getting a massive bunch of keys and, trying to get in the place for about 3 hours, because you can imagine there's about 300 keys. And I'm just trying to find that key doesn't work, right? This one, trying to go through them all. And, when I got in there, I thought, oh my God, what have I bought? The grass was grown, the boards had fallen down. It had completely and utterly gone to ruin. Obviously, the receivers had gone in. They'd literally ripped the place apart. And, at that point, I hadn't told the wife or anything about what I'd done. And it was only really when, Sky turned up and BBC turned up and, they're asking, can we speak to the new owner, Rob Smethurst? And I'm thinking, that's me.
You talked about you being in oblivion, but were you oblivious to what the plight of Macclesfield town had been?
Totally oblivious.
Wow. Okay.
I hadn't.
Because you're in the area.
I'm in the area. Yeah. I knew. I knew it had gone. I knew it had gone. I knew a lot of people in the area were devastated. I saw it on the news, and I had quite a lot of friends that obviously love the football club, and I know when it went under, it just ripped the community apart.
Are you a football man though? Like, did you grow up kind of thinking one day when I make my millions, I'll buy a football club?
Gary, absolutely not. No, it was one of those ridiculous moments in life. When you just think, I'm going to have a go at something that I needed something because I was bored.
You needed a purpose.
I needed a purpose. I needed some direction, and I just thought, well, maybe I could make a difference. I'd just sort of got myself in a good position with obviously drinking, and I'd gone through sort of a program to sort my head out, and that kind of has given me a purpose, and I'm not saying it's saved my life, but in some ways it has, because it's given me direction, and I wanted to build something so special, not just for me personally, but genuinely for like a community that had lost a football club, and for me it was about trying to make a difference, because I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but when you do make your money and you can buy whatever you want, your houses, cars, and everything else that goes with it, you actually don't want them. You know, it actually takes you the opposite direction. And you know, how many watches do you really want? How many cars do you want? You know, and you think, well, what can I do to make a difference? Because that's kind of the person I am, really, and you know, I wanted to give back.
In the build, do you know what? Not even in the build up to this. I sort of knew quite a bit of it beforehand as well. But the sort of last week, 2 weeks, and then being there on Saturday, highlights the value of a football club to a community, and how also vice versa, that highlights the value of the community to the football club. I mean, you know, interviews with volunteers who every week unblock your toilets, you know, the ground and so on. You know, all of those kind of things that, you know, a lot of people will become, you know, your ground staff have probably got, you know, 3 or 4 volunteers, like lots of non-league clubs with pitchforks and whatever. That's where the club and the community come to the fore.
It does. I think, you know, obviously, you know, we're all watching these big Premier League games week in, week out, but, you know, actually the heart and soul is actually at non-league football. You know, I think when you start to really, you know, get into it, you know, a community, you know, it goes far deeper to what you can do to, you know, the local bars, the restaurants, you know, when we have busy home games, you know, the volunteers, you know, the mental health side of it, you know, the people that you can support, you know, they become friends, even though there's, you know, only maybe 4,000 or 5,000 fans coming. You know, believe it or not, you start to really make great friends within the club, and it goes much deeper. The volunteers want to help. You know, it becomes people's lives, and I think what you start to realise is, you know, how powerful football is within a town. You know, how it brings people together. You know, when you see their faces arrive on a Saturday, their excitement, the joy, they're with their mates, they're with their families. You know, and it really does.
And I
bring
think
that together.
it's such an antidote. Sorry, Mark, isn't it? To, you know, we both work on big Premier League, Champions League. You know, the absolute upper echelons where players, you know, are worth hundreds of millions and are being paid ridiculous amounts of money. And it's not always better, is it? It's not always, you know, that covetable. When you look at what you have, I think there's a lot of people looking on with envy, actually, and remembering a time when they were connected with the players of their clubs.
I think you're right. Look, it's got so serious as well. You know, there's so much money involved, and the love for the sport is all around money. You know, I mean, you know, they forget the grassroots sometimes, and, you know, obviously we develop players, you know, that are coming through the system. I mean, you know, if you just look at our club, for example, we've got nearly 600 kids in the academy, 38 teams. We've got a foundation with 300 kids in that I support that, you know, play football for free, and we give them boots if they can't afford it. You know, we do the Christmas dinners, you know, we open up the stadium, we bring people in that, you know, are less fortunate. You know, and I think what it does is, you know, I don't think that's completely lost within the big game now. I mean, I know obviously they've got to be seen to be doing the right thing, but, you know, it's all about, you know, the big money. And I think if you look at what we've done, you know, we've had, look, school teachers, plumbers, electricians just go knock out Crystal Palace in the FA Cup. You know, I mean, we've got players on, you know, £250 a week, you know, and they train 2 times a week. You know, so you kind of look at that and you think, you know, we're against players there that were, you know, 30 million, maybe on £60,000, £70,000 a week, and, you know, we've gone and in some respects, you know, outplayed them, which is just unheard of.
Sam Heathcote, your centre half, who's also a PE teacher, was on the radio with me last night, and DLW said to him, I'm surprised you're coming on here and are sober. I thought you'd still be drunk. And so I'm like, well, I had to teach today.
Teach a load of 6-year-olds.
Kind of teach a load of 6-year-olds. So that kind of sums up the situation, really. Listen, do you think not caring about football or not knowing a great deal about football has actually benefited you, because you're running a football club based on your principles rather than thinking that you're playing Football Manager?
Yeah, I don't even think that I play Football Manager. I think to me it's about bringing the community together and a fan base of people that, you know, you respect, and, you know, but what it has taught me is, you know, how powerful the game is. You know, look, I've had to learn quickly. I've had to realise that, unfortunately, the better you do at our levels, the worse it actually gets financially.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a big thing that I never really realised when I bought it was, you know, we had a small budget of like £250,000 when we started in the very low leagues. But as we've now moved on, you know, the pressure becomes from the fans. They expect better. We've been used to a winning mentality at Macclesfield. So what's happened now is the pressure's on me, to keep delivering, and the expectations just get higher and higher. And unfortunately, players do cost a lot of money, and if you want to compete at the highest level, you have to pay the money to get them.
And that will be the challenge going forward, won't it? We've talked on this podcast before that there are local businessmen or women who are in charge of, say, League Two clubs who have gone, this isn't viable anymore. This isn't viable for a local business person to be able to own a football club within the 92. I mean, even if the tier above you, the tier below League Two, the National League, there are some seriously wealthy clubs on big budgets, because there aren't restrictions, are there, in the National League? And if you went up, you'd have to compete with them. And the other point of that was, I can remember Sutton United as a non-league club, when they had a great cup run, they played Arsenal, they knocked Leeds out, so on and so forth. And talking to them at the time, and them saying, we're not sure whether we want to go up, actually, because we've got our 4G, 5G pitch, the community can use it, everything's great. If we go up, we'll have to rip that up and put grass in. There are lots of dilemmas the higher you go.
You're absolutely spot on. I think that is the dilemma. I think, we've got a 4G pitch. If we go up to the next level, if you look at our budget, we're probably just short of £1 million, which is reasonably affordable. We've got a great business model where obviously the academy pays. We've got BTEC programs. We've got the bars, the restaurants. We've got a gym. So what we've done is tried to get as much money as we can. We don't take any money, or I don't take any money whatsoever. Everything goes towards the first team. But if you look at going up to the next level, like the National League, you are talking then, realistically, to try and get out of that league, you need anywhere between 2 to 3 million, which is the kind of money you need. And that becomes almost, it becomes unaffordable for the likes of me, So then what you're hoping for is, can you get a bigger enough investor that wants to dream about taking it up? And then, the problem you've got, though, is football clubs do not make money. And it's almost like becomes a toy. You try and make it as business as you can, but the reality is there's only so many pies you can sell. There's only so many drinks you can sell, and then before you know it, when salaries start to increase in players' wages, it does become unaffordable.
There were so many layers to the story at the weekend, weren't there? I mean, you've got a manager who's got a very famous footballing name, and his brother in the studio, breaking down at the end, which was really emotional to watch at home. And then, of course, what happened to the club pre-Christmas in losing a player, Ethan McLeod. I remember when that story, not even thinking about that fixture, but just hearing that story. It's all, the human side of any kind of sporting environment, and imagining what it was like for those players to lose their teammate at the time. And then to see at the weekend, how you brought his family in to try and actually get something from that occasion, and to have some kind of memory of their son within that environment was handled so beautifully, Rob.
I appreciate it. I think when you saw how broken obviously everyone was at the football club. I mean, the players were broken. To be fair, it almost feels like the club was finished. We were in bits. Obviously, I got the phone call very early morning, from the police. And I just broke down, and probably can't even might break down now. But and then John and I had to make the phone calls to each individual player, and I think that's probably, if not one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life. Because to hear the reactions of each individual player was massively heartbreaking, and it has been tough. It always will be tough, but I think the parents to come to such an amazing game, and then for us to go out and deliver the performance that we did for Ethan, because those players, before we even got out there, are still broken, and I think they always will be. But the resilience of the lads to go out there, and then, like you say, then what I saw the parents on the side, on the pitch once we had the massive pitch invasion. The roof had blown off the place. It was, we didn't have a roof, but I'd like to think we did one day. But it was insane, and I saw them, and they were clapping, and I just grabbed them and said, "Look, you need to be a part of this." Ethan was our 12th man on this pitch, and this is what football is about. We took them into the changing rooms. The players hugged them. We saw it on TV, and then we took them, and we gave them Ethan's boots. because obviously they'd not been to the ground since, and they took that away. But you know what? That was a real special moment it meant more that, to be fair, than the win for me. But for them to be there on like you say, 1,000,000,001, chances of winning a top league was incredible.
So difficult, isn't it? Because John Rooney said to me after the match when we were talking on the television, he said he got a message the night before from Ethan's dad, but he didn't know whether he wanted to share that with the team or not, because he didn't want to put extra pressure on them. And that is the fine line in this grieving situation, isn't it? That by wanting to do it for Ethan, they actually, as a group, would put more pressure on themselves.
It did, you're right. I think, John rang me and said, what should I do in this situation? And I said, look, between, me and you, maybe let them have, they've been through enough.
Yeah.
Maybe go out there and express themselves the best they can without that added pressure. And that was a decision that we both made. But afterwards, seeing them hugging, I mean, what a moment. You never, what they've got to go through now is well, there's no words, as you can't really talk about it. I mean, what they're going to feel like for the rest of their lives. But we'll probably do something definitely at the football club. We'll create some scholarships, which is what we're going to do. We've got a big educational program as well, which people don't realise. We've actually just done a big deal with the Premier League as well. For kids that need educated. So we've teamed up with UCLan University. So I'm a big believer in, it's amazing how many kids that come through the academies and then fall out of academies. And that was something that's a passion of mine. So I've created a sort of, scholarship program for kids to get a 3-year degree at university, for the kids that might not make it as a player.
How, I'm sure you have put your foot wrong every now and then over the course of this journey, but at the moment you've got everything in such a good place and doing everything the right way. What, with a football task force and the FA and all of this, what could the game do to allow clubs that do things the right way to flourish?
I think that there's a massive emphasis that we need to keep the 3G pitch. I think you can't underestimate the value of that at the levels. We generate all our income. It becomes a community asset. We've got tournaments on there week in, week out. We've got kids playing on there from 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock every night within the football ground. And, if you go up to League 2, you lose that whole community thing because, you've lost the identity of a football club because you want to put grass down. And I think, that needs to change. If I was ever going to say anything to change within football, to make sure that these local small clubs like us, that is so important for the pyramid system, that for them to survive because of the amount of money it needs, obviously most of them are run on volunteers, but if they can afford to have the opportunity to put a pitch down, the amount of income that generates flourishes a football club. I mean, without that, I don't think I would survive. So I think, and it's something that definitely needs to change. And then obviously you've got the 3 Up, the 3 Up campaign. I think that's huge. That gives us the opportunity to, flourish within a pyramid system and keep that sort of fluidity going. That you get the chance of actually, moving up, because what happens is the 2 drop down. Usually when they drop down, they've got a bigger budget, and they're massive. So when you look at our situation now, the 2 clubs that dropped down last season, they're full-time players. So realistically, what's happened now is we can only probably try for playoffs. We don't have that opportunity now. So it's something. There's a few changes definitely to be looked at about the lower levels, and maybe a little bit support from the bigger clubs. I think that's massively important. We don't get. I mean, the TV deal that we got on, was worth what 120, 130,000. I think we won 120,000.
Palace gave you all their money.
Palace gave us all their money, which again was incredible from them. But that generated us. So if you look at club, what we probably made on that day was probably just short of maybe 400,000.
Right.
Which is huge money for a club. And then
is that enough for us? Give us a sort of
time frame.
Yes, if you look at sort of our club, we're probably losing around 300,000 a year. we bring in about 2.4 to 2.6 million, but there is always a deficit because, you know, there's always that push that you want to get better players, you know, and better players obviously cost more money. So, you know, if you look at what I've probably got to put into that football club and some of our investors now, you know, we're probably a deficit of around 300,000 of losses.
Right. So that means you'll break even at the very least.
Now we've just broke even. You know, which has been huge for us.
Did getting Robbie's 2 million salary off the books help?
Yeah, well, you know, he's it was 3 million.
And you've got Brentford next, another Premier League side. Although it was so funny with the draw because John so clearly wanted Liverpool in any guise there. So you know, he couldn't help but look slightly disappointed when Liverpool went elsewhere. And obviously Brentford, another Premier League side. Brentford having a very good season. You know, they won't. I don't think anybody would come and take you lightly now, would they? After what they've seen with Crystal Palace.
No, you know what? I just take it with a pinch of salt. I'm laughing if I'm honest inside. You know, I mean, this has just been one of the most ridiculous things probably within football. You know, when you actually look at these big, huge, you know, teams that are coming to little old Macclesfield. You know, if you only need to look at the changing rooms, you know, the tactic boards are falling off, and you know, we were running around trying to get the radiator. We're all looking for a little thing, you know, to bleed the key, you know, to try and get some warmth in there. So, you know, it's highly amusing, and I think, you know, I'm realistic. This is like the David Goliath story. It's unbelievably great fun.
But who doesn't love that? Everybody loves a David and Goliath story, don't they? And everybody likes the idea of, you know, a Premier League team having a little slap. You know, it's that kind of, you know, just remember what it was that you all started doing. All you multi-millionaire players all started playing football as kids, you know, in clubs, grassroots clubs. You know, I mean, I know these days that the Premier League clubs scoop up players at a very young age into their academies, but it must have been quite a sobering experience for so many of those players when they left that day to just remember that, the more thoughtful ones, and think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to the players afterwards. They're in shock. You know, they actually said we outplayed them. You know, I mean, you know, you've got Lewis Fenton, you know, great player, you know, playing against an England international, you know, and you know, what an experience, you know, and you know, he was headering every ball. I mean, even at the start when, you know, Dawson ran and almost got that challenge straight away. I think that's what set the whole, you know, whole precedence for the game is, you know, you're on our ground here. You know, this is non-league. You know, and he's got his bandage on his head and blood dripping down his face. You know, if that's not non-league football, then what is? And
but they looked like they were having fun. I mean, I said this again on the telly. They looked like they were having fun. They, you know, they were smiling at times. They were taking the mick at times.
They were. Lewis Fenton, Lewis. Sorry, one of the players, didn't he, did like a Ronaldo move, you know, Lacey.
Yeah.
You know, did it twice, you know, and you're just thinking, what is going on here, you know?
But Sam Heathcote again said to me last night, he said, you know, 1-0 up, I was saying I think he said to Liam, you know, we're doing well here. And then when the second one went in, the two of them looked at each other and went, oh my God, we might actually do this. And to know that they're having those kind of normal conversations as well.
While the game's going on.
While the game's going on.
Yeah.
And John Rooney came in the studio with Chappers afterwards, and I think I've seen him on every show bar Loose Women actually over the last 2 days.
He's on everything, isn't he?
And obviously, you know, the role of a manager at Macclesfield is very different to kind of anywhere else that we normally see in football. So, and him talking during the week about, you know, the snow on the pitch and the other things that he has to do in his job. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with him and what he does during the week. Because if the players are only training 2 times a week, you know, there's a lot more time, isn't there, for him to...
Yeah, there is, and look, we've got this real special bond. It's like a band of brothers, all our players, and, you know, we've got our staff, backroom staff. You know, we'll all jump into whatever we can. I mean, we had all the snow on the pitch. You know, we're all out on the pitch. Dawson's on a tractor. You know, and then you've got, you know, Rooney shouting at him, saying, you know, you need to rest. You've got a game. You know, and you know, the banter is brilliant. But I think, you know, obviously Robbie left and Rooney came in, and you know, wanted him to be the manager. He was obviously still playing for us. You know, so I knew that we would lose one of our best players. You know, but what I've really liked about him is he's just a dead nice guy. You know, he's grounded. He's not into all the social media stuff, to be fair. He just wants to get on with his business. You know, he's got a great relationship with the players. He's got great respect as well. And, you know, when you start really getting into the sort of technical side of it, you know, his vision and how he wants to bring the players in, it's actually really impressive. And, you know, I know he's a young manager, but what I'm seeing up to now, he's got great leadership skills, and I think that's what you need within football. The days of going into a dressing room screaming, shouting, kicking buckets and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't work. I mean, I remember when I bought that, the club, and that was the first thing I saw. I thought, oh my God, I've not come from this background. This is like a HR disaster. Everyone's shouting, kicking off, swearing, and you're just like, really? But actually, the more articulate they are, they talk to them. And, some players need an arm around them, some don't, some need shouting at. But, he's kind of really gauged that well. And, from what I'm seeing up to now, he's doing fantastic.
But, you could argue you might need even greater empathy and emotional intelligence at your level, at National League North level, than at Premier League level, because you're woking away. Right, we're recording this on a Tuesday, woking away tonight in the FA Trophy, but your players have got jobs as well. So trying to balance preparation and the psychological effect of sports, whatever, but also with their job, you can't just immediately find. I have a problem with fine systems in football anyhow, but you can't just find someone for being late if parents' evening has run on by an extra hour. Can you?
You're absolutely right. You can't, and I think that's something that you have to look at. There's times when we do get them calls, and you have to adapt. But I think non-league football has got a lot more serious over the last decade, really, or however long it's been going. It's the time when you get the big lads with the big bellies running around.
They all look like athletes, your players, don't they?
Well, they do, don't they? And I think that's the difference. That these kids have come out of academies. They've dropped out of academies. Our job is to go out and find them and find that talent. We've got a great recruitment team, and we're always identifying the kids that have potentially fallen out of the Premier League. We've got two at the club now. That have, one was at United and one was at Derby.
Yeah.
And they're both great players, but they're fit, they're athletic.
They know how to be professionals, but they're balancing that now with real life, if you like. And actually, to your point, Chappers, it's interesting because John, the way you described him there as a manager, you can see certain managers even at the top flight are still a little bit more of that kind of a bit colder, a little bit more businesslike, but actually it doesn't matter because they've got people around them, haven't they? They've got maybe the assistant coach or the assistant head coach can be the person that puts the arm around. Maybe the set piece coach can be the person. So they've got such a huge staff that everybody can have different roles, whereas John has got to do everything for all people, and I guess that is an incredible learning ground for a young manager to have all those experiences in such an intense period.
He does. Look, if you look at him, not only is he a manager, he's got to be director of football, he's got to be head of recruitment. He's got to be, he's got to clean the pitch. If the toilets are blocked, no. Maybe that's too far.
The volunteers.
The reality of it is, I'll make sure that he does. But he has to be aware of everything. I think that's something that we've all had to learn. I've had to learn to be director of football as well, and recruitment. I've got to make decisions. So we kind of do it as a big team thing. I think football's changed where, if you look at our club, I can't really let the manager go out there and spend the budget all in one go. We've got to put things in place to make sure that we don't get anything wrong because we haven't got that luxury. If we've got 3 players on the bench that are on, £500 a week or £1,000 a week, we can't afford to keep them. So we can't just go and replace them if they're on a year contract or a 2-year contract.
And most of them are on a year, I'm guessing, aren't they? Because that is non-league football. So the long-term planning is quite difficult because there is such a churn.
There's such a churn rate. Some are on pay as you play. It was brilliant when we first started because it was all pay as you play. Yeah. It was great. If something didn't work out, you could agree and say thanks very much. But now it's contracted. You're thinking, oh my God, he's on maybe 60,000 a year or 40,000 a year, and we haven't got that luxury to go right. You 4 aren't good enough. We're going to go out and buy another 4 players. So
Jim Ratcliffe's listening to this, going, "This is how I saw it working.
This is how he should have seen it." His director of football is really the recruitment is the most important thing in football.
And just finally, obviously you've mentioned your kind of moment on Rightmove, your moment of madness, and Rightmove have paid you kind of respect and compliment in return, haven't they? They've come to you about potentially being involved.
They messaged me yesterday, actually, bizarrely, saying, look, I think we need to do something. And I'm like, yeah, you do.
Oh, brilliant.
You know, any financial help, please, you know, anything, you know, would be nice. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Long may it continue for you. And just from a personal point of view, every single person that I dealt with on Saturday was an absolute joy. It was such a lovely place to be and be around.
Brilliant.
And I can say that to you, Rob, and this will only matter to sort of non-league fans in the Northwest, but with my Altrincham connections, I can still say I had a lovely time at Mac.
That's okay.
Can I just say as well, as somebody,
That's
I would
amazing.
say I'm on Rightmove almost more than any other website. I've never seen a football club for sale. I'm devastated. I mean, it's literally my
commercial section. That's what you missed out
right.
on.
Okay.
My God, I dread to think what Gabby may buy in the next couple of weeks.
Chappers, do you want to go 50-50?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right, come on then, Gabby, because this story has irked you.
Yeah, it has, because
By the way, how good was Rob? He was great, wasn't he?
just
Yeah.
so as lovely as I'd hoped he was going to be, because obviously, you know, you see somebody like I saw him on Saturday, I've read lots of things, and, you know, he just seems to be absolutely, you know, his heart is in the right place for that club, and I just hope that somehow the fans can just manage expectations a little bit, because sometimes be careful what you wish for. You know, you don't want to lose that heart and that community, do you? And as we always say as well, you know, everybody wants a piece of the big pie, don't they? And the big pie's only got so many slices, and sometimes you just... And it's easy to say that if you know, have been associated with a big club, or you've had, you know, you've had a bit of taste of going to, you know, Wembley and watching your team win. You can say that, can't you? But I think it's so important that those community clubs are well supported. Right. So I just saw this story and thought, you know, it was such a naive thing. Now, it might have affected you and impacted you in your life somewhere. I'm not sure. Have you ever kind of been made to take jewellery out to play sport?
In my belly button piercing, yeah.
I'm glad you went there.
Did think for a second, and I thought, no, we'll go with that. Anyhow, back to your story.
Okay, so this is Estelle Cascarino making her WSL debut for West Ham, trying to come on against Chelsea, and she had an earring which she covered up with tape, because she said it couldn't be taken out unless there was medical a doctor had to do it, some kind of medical support to take it out. I'm not quite sure what kind of earring this is. So she wasn't allowed on the pitch, because you're not allowed to go on with tape on your earring like that in the WSL. Apparently in the Champions League you could do this, she said. But the thing that, I mean, Farrah Williams herself, who was covering the game, said it was a schoolgirl error. I can't believe the club didn't know this. You know, that seems extraordinary. I think back to school when girls deliberately had their ears pierced so they could miss games for 6 weeks, you know. So this is not new, this phenomena, because not everybody loves sport, apparently. But Estelle, this is, you know, it's just so naive, isn't it, that the club didn't have kind of a steer on this. And on the one hand, you think, you know, all these promising signs in women's football, particularly with gate receipts and brands and marketing, and then you kind of get a little moment like this where you're reminded that, you know, there's still a bit of naivety around. So
somebody should have spotted that.
That's what I just can't believe that in, you know, a club now, or, you know, in a league now where, you know, there is so much kind of that the eyeballs are there, the money's there, the branding's there, and then somebody can make a mistake like this. I mean, she must feel like a complete fool, mustn't she, really?
You may have thoughts on this. You may have stories about missing PE, or maybe more relevant, you may be involved in non-league football and have thoughts about everything that Rob said today. Get in touch with us. Email thesportsagents@global.com. You can use social media or the link in the show notes.
I once came back. I was at school when we had the teacher strikes. And of course, the things that went were art and sport. But we had these amazing PE teachers who just kind of kept on doing clubs and things. And we had cross country. And it was after there'd been a strike in the lesson after lunch. I was 13. And so everybody just went home, because it was the after lunch lesson. But it was PE afterwards. So I came back, right? So me and my two friends, like, you know, Spotty, probably were Spotty as well, but sporty types.
Oh, nicknames were different back then, weren't
mine
they?
was Scabby.
People.
So, so the three of us came back because it was cross country. And we got told off. We were kind of, because we were a bit late or something, 5 minutes late, and they told us, and we were like, but we're the only three here. Are you not going to actually do anything with us? So
did you not do it?
No, they ran us around Roundy Park in the snow in shorts. I mean, be careful what you wish for.
Our past episodes are available on YouTube, Global Player, or wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, please. Follow, leave a review.
Thank you so much for listening.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.